Welcome to episode 326 of the DFO Rundown. I'm Jason Greger, and this is always brought to you by Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important. Fountain Tire specializes in tire and auto service, and you don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service, because at Fountain Tire, they do both. They'll treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle. If you need new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle, stop into Fountain Tire and they'll sort it out. Stop in and check out fountaintire.com. As we welcome in Frank Saravalli, as the NHL season is now underway. Lots of games. We've already seen some 3-goal blown leads in a few games this year, including last night. Celebrini gets his goal and an assist, but the Sharks blow a 4-1 lead and lose in overtime. So last year, Frank, the NHL had tied for the most ever third period comebacks, and looks like we're well on pace to potentially tying that or breaking it already, the way the third period comebacks have gone, including the Blues last night. So we'll get to all those games. But first, I think we should start with maybe the most important topic in the NHL right now, and that involves, the Hurricane and, Tampa Bay and Carolina. The game on Saturday has been postponed. Tampa Bay has been staying in Carolina with their families. We saw it. If you're a baseball fan, the roof of the Trop is ripped off. Like, it's pretty obviously serious ramifications for all the people there, and hockey kind of takes a little bit of a backseat.
Yeah, first off, thinking of everyone in Florida, it's been a really tough few weeks because they got a dose of Helene before that. And Look, this has also been a really tough week for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I talked to a few players earlier in the week that their whole team is on edge. Everyone in the NHL wants to get off to a fast start. That's not even something the Lightning have been thinking about this week. They're thinking about everyone in harm's way, friends, their community, property, everything. So they've been in Raleigh since Monday. The Lightning flew 47 family members and their pets to Carolina, where they've been hanging out since. They practiced on Tuesday and Thursday. Their game, obviously, season opener in Carolina on Friday night. And, they've sort of been watching from afar helplessly while their community has been inundated. So the good news is it seems like with the, sort of last minute southerly track that a lot of people in the immediate Tampa area came through unscathed, others not so lucky. So no arena damage to report at Amalie Arena. You saw the Trop, as you mentioned, but they made this decision to postpone the game on Saturday for a few reasons. Everyone is still, focused on cleaning up and the efforts, and they also didn't want to take emergency personnel that would have to staff the game for safety reasons and traffic and things like that away from other actual duties. And so the Lightning, I believe, are going to hang out in Carolina a couple extra days after the game. And by the way, I want to give credit to the Canes. Big assist here. They've helped out the Lightning in a big way, helped them with ice time. They worked to get extra tickets so that all the family members that are in town could go to the game on Friday night. And the Canes have obviously just been through this. So they're going to dig out today. And then at some point in the near future, you're going to hear about a philanthropic effort that the Lightning are taking on to help their community. A great example is what's gone on in Raleigh. They just announced Raise Up. That's their team slogan this year, Raise Up. So now it's Raise Up 1 million for the Hurricane Helene raffle that is going directly to recovery in Western North Carolina. So, I always say hockey community, really powerful place, but you especially feel it this week. And just thinking of all the guys in the Lightning, I know how hard it is to probably focus on playing in a week like this.
Yeah, and their next game at home would be the Tuesday, the 15th, and then Thursday. Those games, as of right now, your understanding is they'll be ready to play by then?
Yeah, I mean, the arena's fine and ready to play. It's really just a question of, is it the right time for the community? So that's what they're weighing out right now. But I think they're probably leaning toward playing the game on Tuesday.
Okay. There's been lots of talk, Frank. Contracts are always a big deal. We see the goalies and Swayman and Allmark signing identical 8.25s. There's talk about the Shesterkin and his contract extension, but not a whole bunch on Alexis Lafreniere. And I wonder if both sides, Frank, here you look at Lafreniere and what he did in the playoffs, and everybody was like, okay, here's the breakout. And it's interesting when I look at him, and I'm not saying that he's going to be this player, but if you look at the arc and the path of Nathan MacKinnon and a former number 1 overall pick, and you know what, it was a 50-point guy for a lot of time. Then he signed his long-term deal at $6.3 million. In the first year, he was still a 50-point player, and then he exploded and became a 97-point player, and obviously now, 140-point player. What's your expectations on Lafreniere in New York, and how this negotiation is going to go? Obviously, they'd like to lock him up long term, but I wonder if his camp looks and says, "Hey, we believe now that what he did in the playoffs is something he can carry over in the regular season." And is this a year that he pops?
Well, he's already off to a good start, right? First game, 2 points. They've been talking for a while. I'm told they made pretty significant progress in the summer, and talks are still ongoing. I wouldn't be shocked to see it get done sooner rather than later. I don't think it's done. I think there's still a lot of different options on the table. And the Rangers, it's not that they paused for a second, but getting the most expensive guy on your cap, or one of them, done in Shesterkin, that just makes the puzzle a lot easier to put together, right? So they focused on Shesterkin for a bit, still talking to Lafreniere, and I think there's probably a push from a Rangers perspective. What if he has a similar leap? I saw a lot of stuff in my feed after my reporting on Amazon Prime on Thursday night that were saying, well, this guy only has 57 points. What if he takes as big a leap, or maybe even slightly more, than he took last season? He goes from 57 to 75 or 57 to 80. It's entirely possible with the guys that he's playing with. And by the way, he doesn't get first unit power play time. He's done almost all of that at even strength. So it's certainly within the realm of possibility that he gets there. And so that's going to end up costing the Rangers a whole lot more. If you get to 80 points this year in a contract year, he's in a unique spot because there's only 2 RFA years to buy. So this is going to be pretty expensive. The talks that they've had to this point have centered around 8 times $8+ million. And I know people are seeing that. They go, but he only has 57 points. Just think about the upward trajectory. Think about the cap increasing significantly, and think about how much he can still continue. Like, he could be a real value buy at that number if the Rangers are able to get it done. What's trickier is if the Rangers say, yeah, that's great, but these next 2 years, we're in it cap wise. We can't afford to do that. Can we go shorter term? The problem is, if they go shorter term, I still don't see that number AAV coming in lower than 7.
Oh, no chance.
And you got to think about it from Lafreniere's perspective too. He's 22. If he signs an 8-year deal, this might be the one big deal of his career.
Yeah. Actually, happy birthday. He turned 23 today. So
that would be a present.
Yeah. And if you look, the reason I brought up MacKinnon, I know people are going to be scoffing. Go look at Nathan MacKinnon in his first 4 years. He had 63, 38, 52, 53. And when he had 53 points, he had 16 goals. He had 21, 14, 24. Lafreniere's career high last year was 28 goals, 57 points. So more goals and, a few more points than MacKinnon. They're both number 1 overall picks. And he's not the same explosive, just absolutely shot out of a cannon speed as MacKinnon. But as you alluded to, his power play time is something that his point totals are just going to go up when he gets on that first unit power play. And I think it's only a matter of time when that's going to happen. And I've always said the NHL is not a teenage year, a league for me. And these guys are both number 1 picks. And some guys just take a little bit longer. 28 goals and 57 points in year 4 is nothing to scoff at. It's a hell of a season. And I think he's going to be an 80-point player this year, Frank. I really do. And,
yeah, I agree.
And so,
it's going to cost them a whole lot more if they wait to find out.
Yeah. And that's the balance, right? But, you know what? If you're him and you say, hey, I signed a 2-year deal at $7 million, whatever, that there's benefits that in 2 years, the way he's producing next
2-year deal would walk him right to free agency. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, 2 years, it'd only be 6 years, right? For him, he wouldn't be a UFA because his birthday's also after July 1st. So, yeah, right. You'd have to have 7 years or be 25 as of July 1st, and he'd be neither.
Okay, I was told 2 years RFA.
Really? That's it?
Yep. Anyway.
Well, that'd be odd.
And so a similar but different situation, certainly age-wise, is Brock Besser. What if he has another 40-goal season in Van?
Yeah.
Which another guy off to a great start, 1 game, 2 goals. The chemistry with JT Miller is obviously real.
It's 100% real. So when you look at Brock Besser, do you see Sam Reinhart contract?
Do I see Sam Reinhart? I know this sounds funny to say, but I kind of remove all of the no state income tax guys because it's so hard to compare the two. It's like they're living in an alternate universe. I mean, look at the deal that was signed by Carter Verhaeghe, right? $7 million a year is a steal. And I know he's a little bit older and all those, like, I get it, but that's the pure advantage of no state income tax. Like, the calculation is just so different. I mean, the first comp that kind of comes to mind, and yes, I know that it's also a no state income tax place, but Philip Forsberg from a couple years ago, like, if you look at their numbers at the point that they arrive, Forsberg did it in a contract year. He had 42 goals. He also had 42 assists. It was 84 points. And in just 69 games, by the way, he signs 8 times 8.5. Both wingers. Forsberg had a ton of seasons before that in the 20-some goal range, which that's where Besser was. I think that's probably a pretty decent starting point. But here's the thing. The Canucks and Besser, they haven't talked. I think both sides right now are pretty comfortable to watch and let this play out a little bit and see how Besser starts. The prior 2 years, prior to scoring 40, his average over 82 games was 23 goals a season. So yeah. Which one is he? Is he 25 or is he 40? I don't think the Canucks have any intention of paying a premium on one really good season. So they're going to wait and see, can you do it again?
And I understand that. Makes sense for me to do that. And I think, honestly, if you're Brock Besser's camp, it makes sense kind of on both sides, right? I think you can, there's some guys that'll go to free agency. I still think too often in the NHL, we talk about play, they're going to go to free agency. And how many actually go, right? Like Steven Stamkos. Now, it wasn't even his choice, Frank, right? He's been on record as saying he wanted to stay. It's rare that productive guys get to free agency. Some do, but they're the outlier, right? Now, Besser, who knows? Like, maybe he's the outlier. We'll see. But
he also, I think, wants to stay, which that to me was the real turning point for Besser. Remember all the turmoil that, his name was out there. They couldn't move him. He's making too much given what he was producing. He's dealing with the off-ice stuff, the tough, really tough situation family-wise with the death of his dad. And it's almost like he kind of turned the corner through all of that and then made this declaration at the end of, the season a couple years ago and said, hey, I know that my name's been out there a lot, but I really want to be a Vancouver Canuck. I didn't want to get traded. And with that, it kind of felt like he hit the ground running last season and was a totally different player. So he's got the talent, the capability, the tools. I'm really, I think a lot of people are rooting for Brock to see if he can do it again, because it'd be a hell of a story.
Well, no question. It's funny. He had 4 goals on opening night 2 years ago, followed it up with 2 goals on opening night this season. So he's obviously somebody. He's not Kyle Connor, who set the NHL record, by the way, for 7 consecutive seasons of scoring a goal on opening night. When you think about that, that's pretty unreal. There's a guy who's super confident in his abilities on opening night, but Besser had a good start. The Canucks had a great start, and then obviously, there's another game. Calgary comes back from a huge come from behind victory for the Flames, an emotional game, and Rooney thankfully looks like he's fine in that one. But it's early on, but man, there's been some big storylines. Now, it was interesting. New Jersey and Toronto played, and of course, there's the Sheldon Keefe versus former team angle, but it was also the fact that Craig Berube was discussed rather in-depthly to take over the New Jersey job. And obviously it went to Sheldon Keefe, and then Berube went to Toronto. What do you make of that, Frank? And how close were they in New Jersey to hiring Berube?
I think at one point, probably pretty close. If memory serves me correctly, I believe Craig Berube even went as far as meeting with Devils owner Josh Harris. They were certainly interested, and kind of the longer it lingered on, there was a ton of interest from Ottawa as well. The longer it lingered on, it seemed like they were kind of just waiting for someone like Sheldon Keefe to pop up, and they decided to go with him instead. I think they're really happy with Craig Berube in Toronto. They like that he's sort of no BS, right to the point. He's been demanding, yet they feel like, and this is just in conversation with people around the Leafs, that he's treated everyone with respect. Everyone knows exactly what they're looking for. No gray area. And, even going back to their opening night of the season, you get goalied by Sam Montembeault, a night that you just can't put the puck in the net, but their game just looked controlled. And so that's really what they're looking for. Genuine guy. He's got presence, which I think they were really looking for. And they follow that up with a big win against Keefe in New Jersey.
Well, hey, speaking of, New Jersey in a roundabout way, they started their season overseas with Buffalo, Frank. And now it's 3 games. And I know people will say it's only 3 games, but it's 3 games for the Sabres. They've scored 1 goal in each game. And last year, one of their big concerns was their inability to score. I know 2 years ago, their offense was great, but that's 2 years ago. It's irrelevant at this point. And I just wonder, in Buffalo, you've missed the playoffs 13 consecutive seasons, and now you go 3 games in a row and you've only scored 1 goal. Your biggest concern heading into the season was your ability to score. And right now, and you give them $100, they ain't scoring in a brothel. So it's not good for the Sabres.
I mean, that's really the tough part to figure, because they've got plenty of talent to be able to score, right? Tuck gets on the board. Tage Thompson. I'm expecting big things this year from Jack Quinn. It's hard because they're feeling it right now, right? You have another season of promise and you stumble out of the gate again and you're not scoring. It's like, I can't, trying to, find the right metaphor, but it's like trying to kill the ball off the tee. You want to hit it so far and it ends up being horrible the harder you try and do it. And same thing with starting a season where you need to get off to a good start. The more you want it, the less it happens. And I think that's probably a little bit of what they're feeling, that they probably just need to settle in a bit. And it's also tough because you look around the league and so many defensive miscues. How many 6-goal nights have we seen so far? It's like amazing. 8-4 we've seen final scores so far this year. And the Sabres are going, can we just get like half of that for 1 game? It's tough. I feel for them in Buffalo because I know how much they want it. And I'm still bullish on the Sabres. I know it's 0-3. I know my prediction's not looking good. The strength of that back end has to come through.
Yeah, at some point, right? Yeah, well, they might have to jump up in the play more and start leading the offense. Maybe that's their.
By the way, Kopitar hat trick.
The big
decent
man.
little start for the Kings.
Hey, Andrzej Kopitar is, he's obviously going to be a surefire Hall of Famer. He's the best player ever from Slovenia. We all know that. But he just continues. He, like LA to me, Frank, this year with their change in how they were going to play. And like, I thought Adrian Kempe for sure. I think Adrian Kempe's, a hell of a player. Power forward, can fly, can really move. And I was curious how him and Kopitar specifically in what would happen with the Kings. And because if you go back and watch how they played, man, like it was really hard to generate offense as an offensive player and their sit back 1-3-1 format all the time. It was, you always talk, most coaches we hear about be on your toes going forward. The Kings weren't doing that very often. And so I know it's only one game, but I was fascinated the Kempe Kopitar combination to see what they would do this year with a more aggressive approach offensively. And I know it's only one game, but Kings fans, they're going to be infinitely more excited. There's no question about that. We start there. Obviously, Kopitar's not scoring a hat trick every game, but that top line specific for me, I'm very interested to see what they do in this new approach by the Kings.
How much does it free them up, right?
Oh, I think quite a bit.
So that said, I know they just needed a change, and we've talked briefly about Pierre-Luc Dubois, but should they have maybe waited to find out, or was it just time?
We'll find out how the season goes. I think, well, if you look at his 5-on-5 numbers, his 5-on-5 numbers in LA were fairly similar to what he did in other places. You talked earlier about Lafreniere not getting any power play time. Dubois didn't really get any power play time. And if you
didn't earn it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. Earned, that's a question, right? Earn it, deserve it, what have you.
That was their big thing, is that he didn't work. He didn't compete. He didn't battle. There was nothing to his game that they pointed to say this guy has earned more opportunity.
Okay, but why go out and acquire a guy that's going to be a top 6 and then not play him in your top 6?
Yeah, fair. That's fair. I don't know. I think he's one of the true fascinating stories in the NHL this year. How does he look in Washington?
70 points minimum is what I say scores in Washington.
Do you want to bet a steak dinner on that?
Sure. I like 70 points. So yeah, why not?
So anything under, I'll even give you anything under 65. I win a steak dinner from you. How about that?
Sure. So
I'll let you round up.
65 and over. Sure. I'll take it.
Okay.
I like what Washington did offensively. They added some guys. I think he's going to go there. He's for sure going to be in there. Tyler has just texted us. He's written it down. So that's good. All right. First wage of the year. So 65 plus for Dubois. I think he's going to have a good season.
Whose side are you on, Tyler? Is he on over or under 65?
I think I'm going to go under on it. But 65 is a lot tougher than 70. 70 I was for sure under.
But I'm letting him round up. I'm being generous.
Yeah. You guys did tell me last spring you wanted me to write down more stuff that you guys have said in the past. So one of the other ones that I had in here, we had Gregor last year saying there's a 95% chance of Ovechkin being a 30-goal scorer next year, which is now this year. And Frank very much disagreed with that. And on May 2nd, Gregor said Vinny Desharnais will be a second pairing defenseman one day. Frank says any team with him playing 20 minutes a night is a lottery team. So you guys, I think you guys are 1 for 1 in things I've written down. So this is like a bit of a tiebreaker. I like it.
Well, I said someday, one game, and now suddenly that comment's ruined. Like, let's pump the brakes on that one a little bit.
Fair enough. I guess there's still time. But anyways, I am keeping record now.
Remember when you also said he was going to get $3 million a year?
To be fair, it wasn't that far off.
He got 2
by 2.
Yeah. Well, he had turned down 2
by 2, and the team that had him was like, kick a rock. Head off to free agency, bud.
Now, how do you think that team, the Oilers, are looking on the right defense right now? Like,
I don't think the answer was paying Vinny Desharnais 2 by 2.
Well, maybe not 3, but even $2 million. I have no problem with him at $2 million.
I think he has legitimate limitations. Every player does, but like
every player has
his limitations are he's really big. He can play physical, but his puck skills leave you wanting.
Yeah, that's fine. Not everybody has to be an elite puck mover to have success in today's game. So we'll see how it goes. That's only one game in on that comment. But Pierre-Luc Dubois, just for the record, career high is 63 points in 73 games. So I'm liking my 65 points here for sure. We'll see how it goes. Feel free to chime in when the pod's up. What are your thoughts? Are you under or over on Pierre-Luc Dubois? Let us know on Twitter, on the DFO, or at Frank Saravelli, at Jason Gregor. Let's move to some other goaltending talk, Frank. Jake Oettinger, probably sitting back very, very quietly, just him and his agent watching the goaltending situation. And Swayman and Allmark, if you're Jake Oettinger, you're probably looking and saying, that's an easy equal number for me, 8.25, maybe more. What do you think?
They haven't talked. I don't think there's any rush at this point, and it's not from a negative perspective.
No, agreed.
But just no progress to report, I guess, is the update. Dallas has a real tricky cap situation. Like, they're at the limit, and moving forward, they're going to have to make some adjustments. Like, yeah, they've got Jamie Benn coming off the cap after this season at 9.5. But if you want to keep Matt Duchene, he's probably going to be due a raise. He had a 65-point year last year. He re-signs and takes obviously less than he could have gotten on the market because he's playing for a team that's gone to 2 consecutive West finals. Oettinger is well more than doubling his money, and Dallas is going to have to sort out, okay, but we need to pay Wyatt Johnson. We're going to need to pay Logan Stankoven. All these guys, Jason Robertson, ultimately going to be due a new deal. They've got a lot of pieces to put together in this puzzle that, obviously they're going to want to include Oettinger as their homegrown talent that's still just 25 years old.
Yeah, you look at Oettinger and in a give or take here, if he doubles his salary, because he's an RFA at the end of this season, and Ben's a UFA, and you look and say, okay, Jake will get, let's just use Swayman and Allmark as the benchmark and say 8.25. If Jamie Benn signs at 5, then those guys are exactly where they were this year. But then it's the Wyatt Johnson contract that comes up, right? Stankoven's the year after that, but that's the big one. And you mentioned Duchene, Dadonov, I guess, maybe he comes off the books, but he's only 2.25 mil. Wyatt Johnson's going to get a significant raise.
Yes.
And that's probably going to be their challenge. And you wonder if they're going to have to move out, Labushkin and Dumba, when you got guys in your third pair making over 3 mil. That's likely probably where it's going to have to come from.
Yeah, and I'd say there's probably even a slight difference between Oettinger and Swayman. Oettinger has certainly played more games. He's got the playoff track record to speak of. There'd also be more UFA years that you're buying. So the comp, I think the comp is above, in my opinion, the comp is above Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, that's
Swayman helped Oettinger in a big way. And when you talk about Swayman wanting to do it for the goalie market as a whole, Oettinger is going to be one of those recipients probably.
Well, you look, the last 2 seasons, there's only 11 goalies who have played at least 100 games. And Ottinger's one of them. He's started 114. He's made 2 relief appearances. He's played 116 games. He is tied. He's 4th in save percentage at 913 with UC Saros. Shesterkin 915, Sorokin 917, and Hellebuck 921 are ahead of him. And then Oettinger's 253 goals against is tied for second with Shesterkin. Only Hellebuck is better. So he's got, he's played a lot. He's been successful a lot. He's not very old. And his, you're right, his numbers would suggest that he should come in higher. He's Jeremy Swayman simply because he plays more.
Yeah, he turns 26 in December, but right now he's the same age as Swayman. And everyone's saying, look, he's, Swayman's this young guy that's really just kind of bursting into his success. Like Ottinger's been here and done it for way longer.
Yeah. I like Oettinger as a goalie. There's no question about it. So he'll be fascinating. Speaking of goalies, Dan Vladar got the opening night start, which doesn't mean a whole thing in the grand scheme of it. But what do you think their plan is in Calgary? Like, I know some people think, oh, Dustin Wolf's just going to come in and, it's going to be 40-40 split. I'm not sold necessarily on that. Obviously, health is the massive unpredictable plan. But what do you think their plan is in goal this season for their goaltenders?
They just so on the short term, I think this weekend it's going to be Wolf gets the start against the Flyers in the home opener, and then they're going to go Vladar in Edmonton on Sunday. That I believe is the plan. Don't hold me to it, but it's really so it's they're envisioning a split, with someone getting a slight edge in games, but they're open to who that's going to be. And in the meantime, they, his first full NHL season, they really want to put Wolf in positions that they believe he can succeed to start. They don't want to throw him into the fire, so to speak. And so they're going to, at least to start, pick their spots, which makes sense, right? Like let him sort of adjust to everything and move on from there. They're completely comfortable if he takes the ball and runs with it and outplays Vladar and plays slightly more games this season. The interesting thing about Calgary's goalie situation is they're also really open to Devin Cooley in the AHL, either through injury or through someone's play faltering that isn't holding up their end of the bargain, him coming in and taking games. So it's an interesting scenario. I think a lot of Flames fans were wondering, like, yeah, I know it's just the first game of the season, but why aren't we seeing Dustin Wolf start the opener given all the excitement and the expectations that have surrounded him and his game for the last few years? They just want to be, it's not careful. They just want to make sure that they're putting him and presenting him in the best positions possible, which it's not always how it works in the NHL, but they've got this opportunity here. Why not?
And sticking with Calgary, we talk about players and, he's been there now for a few seasons, but they're going to need Jonathan Huberdeau. I don't know if he'll ever live up to, because, my number of 10 points for every mill, like, I don't think he's going to be a 95-point player. So it's going to be hard a 100-point player. But, they're going to need him ideally, Frank, to maybe be a 75, 80-point player for Jonathan Huberdeau. And you know what? Got off to a good start, and good starts matter for players. I don't have any debate on that, but kind of where do you come out on the Flames and Huberdeau, because he's not someone you can look at like a buyout makes no sense. You're not trading him right now with even retaining half. You're probably not doing that for that long. So, it's back-to-back 50-point seasons, 55 and 52 after the 115. And this was a guy who, prior to those last 2 years, if you go from his previous 5 seasons from 18 to 22, he was a top 5 scorer in the NHL for 5 years. So 115 was his peak, but he was pretty consistent for 5 years. And, to just kind of fall off how he has the last 2 years, do you think it's salvageable to get him back to being, a 70 to 80-point player?
I do. I think part of it is certainly confidence. Part of it is opportunity. And there was a kind of interesting moment this summer. Flames coach Ryan Huska, I'm told, got on a plane and went to Montreal to just meet with Huberdeau privately, get dinner. And I think they just wanted to make sure they're on the same page and continue to build a relationship and trust, which I think is really important. And then it's only one game in, but I found it fascinating that Huberdeau played on the PK. He didn't play on the PK at all last season. So with that, his ice time ratchets up just a little bit, and he played 20 minutes in their opening game. Only played 7 games, I think, of 20 minutes in the entirety of last season. That's an indication to me, just looking at ice time, coach, player. Hey, there's something happening here. That's a step forward. So I think he has the potential to change the complexion of this Calgary season. Huberdeau gets hot. Team gets confident. More opportunity for everyone. Offense flows. If you're looking for a path for the Flames to exceed expectations this year, it has to revolve or rest on his shoulders. And that's a really interesting wild card piece, because it feels like a lot of people have counted him out, and he's still a really good player that's just had a tough start in Calgary.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't think his skill set would just erode that quickly at his age. That's a pretty big fall off from top 5 guy over a 5-year period, which is a pretty good sample size, to suddenly just being a 50-point player. So he's capable of it. I think confidence, I think comfort level, there's lots of different things. So, having if a coach comes and flies to you, because that's not normal. Some people might think it is, but it's not normal to see that, especially for a guy that's been there a few years. But it's smart by the coach to, okay, let's have a conversation. The player has to believe I trusted him. I have confidence in him. I believe he can be the player we want. And, you challenge him in a way to give him a little penalty kill time. We'll see how long it lasts. But all of a sudden, maybe that's their way to say, hey, we think you can be a better two-way player. Now you're on the penalty kill. If you can be on the penalty kill against the league's best offensive guys when we're down a man, there's no reason you can't be reliable defensively 5-on-5, right? To me, that's
I was talking to someone in the Flames organization on Thursday after their first game, and we were talking about this in the PK, and they said, I didn't realize how good Huberdeau's stick was just on the PK and being able to make things happen.
Smart player.
So it's just little things that I think you hope just enable him to get back on track. By all accounts, he really likes it in Calgary, so it's not a fit issue. But to your point, it's nice to see the effort being made on both sides, because they're married to each other for better or for worse. That contract isn't getting moved. It's not possible. And the best course for everyone, for team, for player, is to really build it back up again and find success, because that's the only option you've got. No one wants to see this languish.
No, God, no. Yeah, the Flames don't want it. Huberdeau doesn't want it. That's a long-term terrible plan. If you're going to languish as just a 50-point guy for the next 6 years, that would not be ideal. We've got a few other topics. We'll get to those after we bring in Tyler Yaremchuk on Friday morning. Ty, how you doing?
I am good, gentlemen. Back with a new edition of Fill in the Blank. It is brought to you by our friends at Bet365, the largest sports betting platform globally. And you can sign up today using the promo code that is on your screen. If you're watching the show on YouTube, it is Daily365. Get in on a huge range of markets, whatever the sport, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. I got a handful for you here, but we'll start with my Bet365 related one. One thing I like about them is they update their futures props throughout the season, and the over-unders for teams are always changing. They have a total of 8 teams right now who they have projected to go over 100 points. Last year, there were 10 teams. What do you think it'll be this year? Do you think there'll be a bit more parity and teams will slow down, or do you think we could have the same number? Your question is, there will be blank 100-point teams this year, Jason?
Well, that's a good question.
10 last year.
Yeah, I'm looking. So 10's a lot. So I'm going to say, well, God, wasn't there when Seattle got 100 points? I think there was 12. So I'm going to say there's going to be 10. I will say 10 for sure.
10 was actually, and just doing a little bit of digging on this, 10's actually a little bit lower than it usually is. It was 12 the year before and 13 the year before that, which is interesting now that Bet365 has 8 of them projected to hit it. Frank, how many do you think we get?
Just doing some math. I'd heard some people a couple days ago on TV talking about, hey, like, look at that team. When they do this, they're over 500. And when they do this, they're under 500. Like 500 is terrible hockey in the NHL. Just so like everyone's clear.
Yeah,
like
points
500
percentage
is not a good baseline. No. It's 573, 574 is what's required to make the playoffs every year. So 100 points is 609 points percentage. I think there's going to be fewer this year solely because I think we're going to see a bit of a redistribution in the Atlantic. Last year we had 3 in the Atlantic. I also think look, off to a good start again, and certainly the Jets have an identity. Are they going to have 110 points like they did last year? No, I don't think. But could they still be 100-point team? Like, yes, probably. But I also think, Nashville was only 1 point away. They're going to be way better. Vegas, 98 points. I think they're going to be better. I'm going to say we have 8.
8, so it'll be this, or exactly what Bet365 has for the over-unders. Second one I got for you guys. There's a handful of veteran defensemen who are out there still unsigned after training camp. None of them went to camp on PTOs. Kevin Shattenkirk, Justin Schultz, Mark Giordano, all still available. Out of those 3, blank will be in the NHL by January 1st, Frank.
1, Justin Schultz. I will be floored if Justin Schultz doesn't play in the NHL this year.
Do you think maybe he regrets not just grabbing a PTO somewhere, considering no?
He had 2 firm contract offers, but they were situations that he felt didn't make sense for him. So he's going to wait, and he's comfortable knowing, hey, I'm a good player. I'm not old, and there's going to be injuries that pop up that I'm going to be able to go to a team that has a chance to have success. So he's perfectly comfortable waiting. And in fact, some indications he may even consider playing in Europe for a bit to start.
Greg's, out of those 3, see any of them in the NHL by Jan 1?
I'm going to say 2. I agree with Schultz, and I'm going to go with the little wild card. I think Mark Giordano is going to get signed.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a wild card. No. That would be the other guy I would pick if I were to rank them in order. Look, I think he's someone that, first off, is in phenomenal shape. He actually was like right up at the very top of the Leafs fitness testing, even at age 40. And look, he's not fleet of foot. Like, no one is pretending that's the case, but still makes really smart reads. And to think that he can't be a contributor to a team, I think is foolish, even given his age.
Last one I got for you guys. You talked about bounce back players, and I don't think this guy is necessarily a bounce back player. It would be a breakout player. But on the other hand, Alexis Lafreniere is a first overall pick who took a couple years to get going. And I'm curious for your guys' thoughts on Shane Wright out in Seattle. He's only played 17 games now in his NHL career, 16 in the last 2, then obviously 1 this year. But I know on your show in Edmonton, Greg's, you were talking about Shane Wright the other day. We had Stephen Ellis on DFO Live. Maybe this is a guy who's just, again, needed a little bit more seasoning before he could get going. Give me a number for Shane Wright points this year in Seattle. Do you think we could see a bit of an uptick here? Is he finally going to prove he can produce at the NHL level? Frank?
34.
34. So you're not quite buying into the hype?
Well, no, I just don't know that that's totally his game. I think he's a two-way player that is going to be put in different positions that might not necessarily lend themselves to tons of point production. And I also don't know how explosive Seattle's offense as a whole is going to be.
Right. Well, they already moved him up with Jared McCann. So they had him in practice with McCann and Eberle after the first game, swapped him and Beniers.
That's Captain Jordan Eberle.
Yeah, that's right. I think Shane Wright's going to get a lot of opportunity. You got Dan Bilesman. There's no one this is the perfect scenario for him. His AHL coach coached him last year, trusted him, put in all situations, knows his game, and now he's his NHL coach. It doesn't happen very often. Having the trust of a coach is such a massive thing for any player. I think it's even more important for a young player. And I think Shane Wright's going to score 50 points this year for Seattle. I think he's going to be put into a lot of situations. He's big and strong. And there's so many people, they're so quick to want to write off young players in the NHL. I just don't understand it. Right?
I'm not saying I don't think he gets there,
but people were calling him a bust because he's not in the NHL right away. He's in the American League. And I'm like, pump the damn brakes. The NHL, the outliers are teenagers. The outliers are teenagers. The vast majority of them aren't. I don't care if you're the 4th pick overall or the 14th or the 24th. Guys mature at different times. And Shane Wright getting that season in the American League, it was brilliant, I believe, by Seattle. They weren't going anywhere. Shane Wright could have floundered and played in the NHL 12 minutes last year and gained no confidence. What's the point? So I think it's way better. The American League's a good league. It's a tough league with lots of men. And I think Shane Wright's going to get an opportunity. And Beniers, I probably have more questions over than Wright. I think Wright's body type and size is going to help him.
What? Beniers, you have more questions about him than Shane Wright?
Long term, yeah. I like Shane Wright's long-term prospects in the NHL better.
Okay, hold on a second. Do you know that Matty Beniers has already had 57 points in the NHL?
Yeah, I understand that.
Do you know that Shane Wright, I know that he didn't play that many games, but do you know that Shane Wright hasn't done 50 in the AHL?
Buddy, I don't worry, but it's not a sprint.
Okay. I like this. This is
so,
good.
But I just want to be totally clear. Like, you know how big of a leap getting to 50 is this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not, but I believe he's going to get lots of opportunities in Seattle. And Jared McCann is a solid player. He's not a superstar by any stretch, but him and Eberle's a really smart player. And if he's going to get to play there more, I just think, he's going to be able to produce some points. 50 is obviously a high bar. Hey, it might be 45, but I think Shane Wright's going to have a really good season in Seattle. And I think
34 would be a good season. Like, when I said that, I wasn't being demeaning. I'm saying that's a really healthy first year and first step.
Yeah.
If you're really talking about doing it methodically.
If he's getting 34, he's likely not going to be getting a ton of offensive situations, though, is all, right? We'll see. I agree with you on Seattle's overall team offense. I don't think they can match 2 years ago when every forward had 13 goals, which is remarkable. That's going to be pretty difficult to do.
Man, you're going to have some explaining to do on this Beniers over Wright thing, because that's bonkers.
Hey, but it's long term. It's long term.
All right, that is a wrap. I like good thought-provoking questions by me. That started up a good little debate there on a hot take from Greg's. No.
Pat yourself on the back on the way out. Get out of here.
I like it.
One job.
Stuff.
All right, that's a wrap. And that's a wrap on Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365.
Now, hey, it's super early, but I know there was some people outside that were like, geez, why is Utah doing that? Dylan Guenther is making Utah look like geniuses early on. He's got 4 goals in the first 2 games of the season. They're 2-0. Now, if you're wondering, modern day great starts, Vegas, when they came into the NHL, they won their first 3 and they actually won 8 of their first 9. So any Utah fans wondering, you know what, that Vegas season was unreal. They went to the Stanley Cup final. It's a pretty high bar to try to meet, but Utah is off to I know they're not an expansion team, but it's a new franchise. They're off to a very good start for them offensively. They've given it right now. They're outscoring teams is what they're doing. And, that's obviously challenging to see if they can do it long term, but man, if you're a Utah fan, you've got to love the first 2 games for your hockey club.
I'm telling you, low key, one of the best lines in the NHL. Guenther, Cooley, McBain. Size with McBain, skill, speed, creativity with Guenther and Cooley. Anyone who's actually watched Guenther play, they know what a smart play it was for Bill Armstrong to get him locked up. $7.142 million. I'm not kidding. That could be the next McKinnon contract.
Oof. Guenther can shoot the pill, man. There's no doubt about that. So
he's got 4 goals already. Like, he's 10% of the way to 40. We've played 2 games.
And then you throw Clayton Keller on the other line, Frank. Like, Utah's got some offense. They
do. I was joking with Andre Tournier after the game. Someone was asking him about his first line. And I was like, Bear, which one is your first line? Because I think people just assume the one with Keller. I'm like, I'm not so sure that will be by the end of the season.
It's a good problem to have, right? It's a good problem to have. a unique scenario, Frank, that we haven't seen happen very often. And I know it's interesting for some people, they watch it from afar and they're kind of like, what the hell's going on? But Raphael Lavoie has been in waiver purgatory since Sunday. He was placed on waivers by Edmonton. Then he got claimed by Vegas. So now they have to keep him for a day. Vegas had put in waiver claims for both him and Cole Schmidt, and they got both of them. They probably didn't think they were going to get both because you don't know when you put in the claim. And they didn't want both on the roster. So Lavoie gets put on waivers the next day, sits at 24 hours. Edmonton reclaims him, and you're thinking, okay, well, he can go to the minors. Nope. Because a team in the top 8, because Edmonton was 9th in the standings last year. So a team in the top 8, I really think it's Colorado when I look at their roster of forwards that they're deploying right now. That's who my guess would be. So then Edmonton has him. Now they put him back on waivers. Now Vegas could claim him today. And if they're the only team that claims him, then they can send him to the minors. But they might be thinking, well, I'm not sure do we want him on a roster for a day? Because if the team who was in the top 8 claimed him, who didn't claim him the first time, Frank, that was what I learned was no one claimed him other than Vegas the first time. But then there was another team that second time, might have to do with salary cap, etc. It's a unique situation. You don't see guys like I remember Eric Comrie in the COVID year, those goalies. Remember you were put on waivers, but then you had to quarantine, and then that was a gong show. I don't know, it might have been 4 times, maybe 5. He was picked up by different teams, and then you had to quarantine, right, for 2 weeks, and then he was back on it. But to see it this many times in a week is kind of rare.
So it's actually screwed up the Oilers cap a little bit because he's had to sit on their roster now for 2 days that they didn't really plan on. So they were envisioning when they reclaimed him, of course, that they would just send him right down. But as you mentioned, because there was the other claim, they had to keep him on the roster and then waive him again. So to wait for that extra day is another day he has to sit on your roster, which is hurting the cap space that you're accruing. So not an ideal situation for Edmonton. But what is interesting about Edmonton is the cap situation and how it's played out, because a lot of people were wondering, how does it work with the fact that they put Evander Kane on LTIR?
I haven't used it yet. Right?
Well, yes. Yeah. So the quick explainer for anyone watching from afar is basically the way LTIR works is you want to try and get as close to the cap as you can get to, and then put that player on LTIR to demonstrate the need that you have, which then provides you with what's called a capture. Okay. So the Oilers got to within $53 of the cap, which is the best capture that they've ever gotten, and then placed Kane on LTIR to show that they're getting, basically the way it works is if you don't have the need for that money, you lose that money. And so once you go to put someone on to use that cushion, you only get whatever you need. So the Oilers used as much as they possibly could, and they're going to get everything but $53 from whenever they decide to put Kane on LTIR later. Now, in the meantime, they don't need to use all of their cap space, and they're not using the LTIR space. So they got the clean capture, and now they're accruing cap space daily. So when it comes to the trade deadline, as it stands right now, I'm told the Oilers are on track to have $9 million in deadline cap space total between Kane.
We should clarify that. Yeah, that has to do with if Kane goes on LTR, which they'd move him, they'd have this $5 million, and if they accrue, which because
they are accruing right now.
But they were, for the first day, they were accruing on space of $1,063,000, right? And so you accrue that, it would, if in a perfect world they never touched it, everybody stays healthy, they don't have to use it, that would turn into about $4 million cap space plus the $5 million of Kane. With Lavoie on it, it's down to $287 per day, right? So they lose about $4,000.
They've lost 8,000. He's cost them $8,000 in daily cap space.
And so the thing is, though, Edmonton's only carrying 12 forwards. Now, it could go a game where they dress 11 and 7 if they need be, if a forward gets hurt and can't play for one day. But when you look at it, it's going to be challenging to accrue all that. But even if it's a month, right, they look and say, hey, we accrue that cap space. Then for a month, we're down to 200 grand or whatever it is. Then the guy goes back on. So teams try to do it. If you look at how many teams are only carrying 22 players right now, there's lots of teams that are trying to do it. And so you into LTIR. So Kane is on LTIR, but the Oilers aren't in LTIR as you talked about, Frank. So there's a little bit
because they're not using it. Yeah. So it's a sort of different approach than most teams take, because some would say, well, why don't you just wait until you need to use Kane on LTIR? Then you might not get as good of a capture. So the fact that they did it and got it out of the way is hugely beneficial for them later on. They've got all the flexibility they could really ever need, no matter what happens this season. It's just, if they need to expand their roster, if they have other injuries, et cetera, it's only going, that'll just impact how much they're accruing. So
it's something they were able to do at the start because of Matt Savoie, right? They recalled him. Matt Savoie had bonuses. So you get what's called the bonus LTR pool. And so his base salary is $886,000, but he has a bonus of upwards of $1 million. And so when you're in LTIR and you recall a player like that, if he's not on your original roster, he would actually count as a 1.86 recall instead of 886. So you do that. There's some manipulation. And the truth is, you couldn't do that if you waited till November 2nd, for instance. And now you're like, we got some injuries. Now we'll put Kane on there. They might not have been just $53 shy of the cap. They might have been $800 shy. They might have been.
It's use or lose. So like they would have lost it and then lost it forever. So anyway, this was the really smart way to do it. They're in good shape. And if things continue as currently assembled, they will have upwards of $9 million to spend on cap hits at the deadline.
Do you think Colorado claims Lavoie today? Or I don't know if you looked at any of the other 7 teams, the Rangers, the Hurricanes, Canucks, etc. There's a few teams that it didn't make sense to, like, some people thought teams were doing it on purpose to screw the Oilers. And I'm like, I guess in theory, but why? Like, you're only screwing them for 2 days. It's not like this is some, oh my goodness, they're going to just absolutely rip them apart, because they don't have to keep Lavoie other than for the 2 days that he's on the roster.
If it is Colorado, for instance, like, how far away is Arturi Lehkonen? And then if it is Colorado, we know it's about a month shy from Valeri Nichushkin coming back. I think it's November 15th. Yes. And then we still don't have a date yet for Gabriel Landeskog and his comeback. So you can, if you want to, I don't think it's jamming up the Oilers, but if you want to claim him, that's fine, but it's only going to be temporary again until those guys some of those guys are back, that he's going to then be back on waivers again. It's probably just easier to let him go to Bakersfield and have the Oilers continue to, keep him in their system. But
did you look at who Colorado has? Like they got a guy right now, Ivan, first player in NHL history, is same first and last name.
By the way, there was a joke back in World Juniors that his middle name was also Ivan. Totally not true, but there was a graphic on TSN that you can see it. Ivan.
And like he's played 1 year in the American League. He had 12 goals. Raphael Lavoie played multiple years there. He had 28. So if you just look at those numbers, you can see why they might say, hey, this guy's an upgrade, even if it's for 2 weeks, right? Like, it's an upgrade potentially somewhere in the roster. Like,
don't sleep on Ivan. I'm telling you.
They had 3 guys with 0 NHL games played.
No, I think Ivan's pretty good. Don't sleep on him. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, well, he might be, but I'm just saying Raphael Lavoie had been a more productive player. There's no question. Now, older for sure. So we'll see. For his sake, I know some people are like, well, this is terrible. He's actually never left Edmonton, for anybody wondering. Because
but
once
still,
Vegas,
you're in a spot where, it's pretty obvious that the team you have doesn't really have you in their plans. I'm sure he wants more opportunity. Let me go play, even if it's for 10 games somewhere. Let me go get a taste.
And Frank, he's getting NHL money the whole week rather than AHL money, because he would make $200K in the minors, $775K. So he'd make about $1,000, bucks a day, give or take, in the A, where he's making over $4,000 a day in the NHL. So you'll take that for the week. It's obviously it's not ideal, but it's still better, I think, because he's still today by the time it's noon Mountain Time, he'll find out if he's on an NHL roster again. And if he is, that just extends it. And like a lot of players, we've seen guys go on waivers for one team and end up, Ray Whitney's a classic, ended up playing 1,000 games. There's lots of other guys who have done it, that sometimes you just need a new opportunity. And you would think, hey, this team put in a claim for me twice, if indeed that it is Colorado or whichever team does it. He's like, hey, these guys want me. I got to go there and I got to give them everything I have. Because, he did finally get a taste of the NHL last year. And there's lots of guys, like the difference between, I would say probably the bottom 40% of the NHL and guys in the AHL is just opportunity sometimes, and sometimes contracts and different things like that. Like, could Raphael Lavoie play 10 minutes a night in the NHL? I firmly believe he could.
I don't know. We'll see.
No, it will be it's just a unique scenario. You don't see it very often at all. Eric Comrie. Oh, do you think anybody claims Kaapo Kähkönen?
Just double checking his cap hit. It is $1 million. I would.
Yeah, you got to have a team because he obviously has to stay on your roster to be there. So
he had putrid numbers in San Jose, but any goalie would. Other than take him out of San Jose, and he's north of 900 in the NHL. I'd grab him for $1 million. All
right. Well, he's also eligible. We'll find out at noon Mountain, 2 Eastern, if that happens. Frankie, have a great weekend. That was the rundown, episode 326, brought to you by Fountain Tire, where you're looking on great deals on tires, or if you got a little bit of a rattle, guess what? Stop in Fountain Tire. You can fix your tires, fix your vehicle, fountaintire.com. Have a great weekend.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.